Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Across the Pond. We're back again, Barry. Different ponds again today. I'm in some dodgy hotel. It's not dodgy at all. It just doesn't have an air conditioner, and that is less than ideal when it is the heat that it is here in Madeira. But yeah, that's where we're broadcasting to you from today, from Madeira and Johannesburg. I should actually update that London little tag there, but nevertheless, how are you doing, Barry?
I'm doing all right, Chad. As we'll get to, South Africa's been through a really tough couple of days, so I feel a bit worn down, to be honest. I feel quite all over the place. If I look at myself in the mirror, I can see I've had a tough couple of days, but we all keep moving forward day by day, and it's been a good, productive day today. So that's been good compared to the last couple of days. How's Madeira been, dude?
No, good. I mean, not here on holiday, so but it's been really nice in the evenings when I do kind of go for a walk myself, take the camera along. Certainly, all of those will be landing up on Instagram naturally, and then some on the sides of the working week. Certainly have a bit of weekend time as well. So a quick in and out trip, to be honest, just to handle some sort of personal admin. But yeah, glad to at least be able to travel again. That was a surreal experience, no doubt about that. And just like you,
what was
Barry,
it like getting on the plane? What was it like getting on a plane?
Yeah, it was weird. It was a little bit weirder even to the first time I traveled after the last lockdown. Obviously, this time a lot more admin involved in terms of booking a PCR test and just having all these locator forms, one for Madeira, and then when I return back to the UK, going to need another one. So it's just more admin. But other than that, Barry, the airport was really busy. I flew fairly early in the morning, lots of people there. Now that there are a couple of green list destinations. I mean, as we talk about it now, some of the ones that were on the green list have been removed. So Mallorca and Menorca, the Spanish or Balearic Islands, some of those have been removed, which is always interesting. A lot of people have to scramble back before, I think it's next week, Wednesday. But yeah, the little bit of travel that can happen is happening. And I only hope it becomes more normal, to be honest. I only hope it becomes more normal. But I mean, aside from that, Barry, just to touch on your points on everything that's happening in South Africa, and we're going to obviously go through that. I've had a similar experience to you, to be honest. And I say some of my week has been overshadowed by just my mood and that kind of itching almost to just refresh the news. I found myself in these cycles that just kind of perpetuate of ENCA and SABC news, and you're just literally pulling down, watching the latest installment over and over again. And it's quite a hard one to just be continuously on this hamster wheel and to kind of eventually have to give yourself a bit of a talking to and voluntarily step off. Have you found the same thing?
Yeah, definitely, Chad. It's one of those things where you're watching this thing through a screen, and we've chatted 1,000 times in the past, Chad, about how the media distorts things and our social media kind of changes the way you think about different topics. But when something this hectic happens, it's impossible to turn your head away. It's impossible not to look, in a sense. And so I think a lot of South Africa and a lot of South Africans around the world have had a very unproductive week because, like you say, they've kind of had their attention on all the news and all the stuff that's been going on. So it's kind of like you want to be informed and you want to keep up to date, but you also don't want to get sucked into that dark hole of just kind of going through just post after post after post after post. I mean, I would get to the end of the day and I'd look back on what I'd accomplished that day, and it was nothing. It was absolutely nothing. And then I'd have to work in the night to try and catch up for the work that I didn't do during the day. So today's been a little bit better. I've been a little bit more disciplined with not following it as intensely. Nice. But it's hard just to keep your head away when these kinds of things are happening.
Yeah, and I mean, this is being recorded on the 15th of July. So if you are listening after the fact, obviously this is moving very quickly. We'll obviously keep you up to date with where we are at the moment, but that's going to change. And Barry, after the last 3 days, that talking to that I gave to myself today as well. I didn't actually check the news once. So you'll have to certainly give us a bit of an update. So what's moved in the last 24 hours. But yeah, other than that, I think we've got a lot to talk about today, Barry. Shall we get into it?
Let's do it, Chad.
The week that was.
All right, so it's hard to know where to start and it's hard to know how to tackle this, Chad. So you have to forgive me as I kind of try and get some of my thoughts out here.
Yep.
But for those who aren't aware, in South Africa over the past week or so, we've been through a real crisis situation. We chatted in a previous episode about former President Jacob Zuma being sentenced to go to jail, and he eventually did go to jail. So Becky Chele managed to get him before the deadline, and he is currently in Westville Correctional Prison or Correctional Services. And while he did try and appeal for a rescindment of the sentence, and he tried to get an appeal of some sort, it just didn't happen for him, and so now he's in jail. And as we expected, we started to see some protests. We started to see some people kind of speak out against that. A lot of Zuma supporters, in the same way that they tried to kind of surround and Nkandla when he was getting arrested. A lot of them came out into the streets to protest the fact that he actually did go to jail. So it was kind of a sparking point where a lot of people were very angry and a lot of frustrated, and politically it was a bit of a challenging situation. And what happened I think it started in Durban and KZN, we started to see some looting. So mobs of people were going into shopping malls, going to grocery stores, etc., and breaking into these malls and basically rampantly stealing all the stuff from the mall. And it started as one or two malls in KZN. KZN is where Jacob Zuma's home province, and so that's kind of why it started over there. And the looting started in some isolated malls across KZN. And over the course of the next 48 hours, it kind of just grew and grew and grew and grew to the point where there were multiple malls across KZN being looted at the same time. The same sort of looting spilled into areas of Gauteng here in Johannesburg. And across Johannesburg and across Durban and some other parts of KZN, we saw thousands and thousands and thousands of people breaking into shops, breaking into shopping malls, and absolutely destroying them. So walking out with fridges and coffins and food and clothing and anything you can think of, to the point where these shops were absolutely devastated. Obviously, this caused a lot of chaos, and there just wasn't enough police in these places to even put up a fight. So it was absolutely brazen. On live TV, you and I, Chad, were watching people just take the goods out of these places, break these things down, breaking things, trying to put them into cars and packets, and just thousands and thousands of people stealing stuff from these shops. We saw lots of violence as well. We saw a few people die. We saw shops on fire. We saw lots and lots of chaos, and basically a state of anarchy for about 48 to 72 hours here in South Africa. Very worrying signs for all of us. It was very, very difficult to watch, especially as it got more and more and more and more. And it got to the point where the police just was completely overwhelmed. They just didn't have the numbers because, of course, the police are still dealing with COVID stuff. They're still kind of trying to keep their normal day-to-day lives going. And we just don't have enough police here in South Africa. It's just the truth of the matter. And so, unfortunately, there was no kind of ramifications. And we saw thousands and thousands of people like just looting and rioting. And so what started as a Zuma protest, Chad, actually had a lot of other social implications that we'll get to in a little bit. But that's sort of what happened. And if we look at what happens today, Cyril Ramaphosa came and spoke to the country about a day and a half ago now, and kind of deployed the military as support for the police service. So we've seen the military out in the streets, and things have stabilized for the most part here in Gauteng. They're still a little bit down in KZN, but for the most part, things are relatively stable. I don't know what that means, but we aren't seeing looting live right now as we speak. But an incredible amount of damage has been done, Chad, and the whole country is in a bit of a state of shock. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I think that's the perfect summary. I mean, obviously, for those South Africans watching and listening, they'll already be completely up to date. But I think why it's so important is because, I think this is a global story that's not really getting enough attention in the media overseas. I mean, I saw a couple of very short little clips up on sort of BBC or the Telegraph or whatever the case is, but it certainly isn't making headlines here even, it's such a desperate state of affairs, one that I just can't comprehend myself. I mean, I feel so bad and almost scared really for all of the people I know who are in South Africa, because it isn't just a case of, like you say, shops getting looted. There is a bit of violence there too, with certain communities. There's quite a bit of tension in certain areas. More specifically in Durban and in Phoenix, I believe, and some others. But yeah, certainly just such a worrisome state of affairs, and far-reaching consequences. I mean, if we just look far beyond, so let's say we do reach a level of stability within the next few days, it's now the question of how much, in financial terms, how much has been taken. The damage as well, because it's not stuff that's just been taken, Barry. We're also talking about malls that have been burnt down, and not one or two, in large numbers, trucks set on fire, cars set on fire, all sorts of stuff. So far-reaching consequences here, and I think it's when you start to think about that as well. Once you get past the kind of crisis and kind of handle everything that's happening currently, it's the looking to the future that I think is even more worrisome.
Yeah, definitely. It's exactly the right point. And I think it's definitely within the billions of rands. It's that kind of number, because we saw major warehouses being looted as well. It wasn't just the retail stores, but major macro warehouses and mass mart warehouses being looted as well. And like you said, the damage is going to take years and years and years and years to get back. South African infrastructure isn't where we want it to be as it is, right? And the fact that you're going into these neighborhoods and you're destroying these important pieces of infrastructure is really dangerous and really damaging. And so as all of South Africa, the mood is incredibly somber, as you can imagine. Everyone is completely just devastated. And I think that the long-term implications, both with the rebuild that has to happen, but also the reputational damage when it comes to international investors. I mean, if you're a grocery store chain, or you're kind of if you're Walmart right now, are you going to build stores here in South Africa? Like, why would you go through it if this is what happens to your stores, So lots of worries when it comes to that international involvement as well. But more importantly, things like food security, Chad. So the Durban port was looted. So a lot of the food and the stuff that was coming into the port it might not be able to get to the rest of the country. A lot of these shopping centers in these key areas, when you destroy all the shopping centers, like, what happens to the food for those people, right? How do they get food to those areas, and medication and all sorts of things? And we're still in the middle of this COVID third wave. That's another big part of this story, is that we saw thousands and thousands of people gathering in these looting environments, and who knows what that's going to do to the COVID numbers over the next couple of weeks. We've already seen hospitals already stretched, and I've chatted to a lot of friends of mine in the healthcare system. Nurses can't get to work because of these riots, and doctors can't get to work, and so it's putting even more pressure on the healthcare system that's already stretched as it is. And it's almost like it's a double hit to the throat, Chad, because we were just over the peak. We had just started to see cases go down over the last couple of days, and it felt like, okay, maybe we've peaked this third wave. And now we're gonna have to wait and see over the next week or two to see what this looting does to those COVID numbers. So it really is a gut punch for everybody. I think everyone is I've been very sad the last couple of days, and it's been very tough emotionally just to kind of wrap your head around what's happening and try and understand what's going on, because it's not a Zoomer thing. Like, I think it's the biggest thing that's come out of this, and people starting to realize it's not a Zoomer protest. This has been a inevitable kind of flare up that comes from living in the unequal society that we have. If you kind of dig into some of the reasons that this happened, it's because of the rampant poverty in South Africa. It's because of the rampant inequality and the economic devastation that we've seen here because of the COVID lockdowns, with our unemployment rate skyrocketing even more than it was. People are just desperate. And unfortunately, a lot of poor people felt like this was an opportunity to get some food for their families, or to get some goods for their families. But it's so short-sighted, because what happens in a week's time when you got no malls to go and get more food, right? And that's kind of the danger that everyone is predicting, is what are the medium and long-term implications of this. It's a really dire situation, Chad, and it's I don't know what to say.
Yeah, it's like you say, it's the malls to get food in the future, but it's also all of those jobs for all of those people in those malls. It's that is the pay packet of how many different families for like we say, how many years it's going to take to rebuild all of this. And talking about the damages, I mean, I heard Sasria, which is, I believe, the agency that handles the insurance for these types of kind of damages, has kind of indicated that if there's an excess of 30 billion rand in claims, they may have an issue. And I mean, just based on, I guess, understanding the way the insurance industry works, Barry, obviously, it's all based on kind of actuarial kind of calculations and risk and probability and all that kind of stuff. I mean, what are the chances of something like this happening on such a scale? I mean, I'd imagine, you'd collect premiums and obviously make sure you have enough assets ready to liquidate for, isolated events here and there, maybe one or two flare-ups. But when we're talking about two massive, locations like KZN and Gauteng, and the quantum that we've seen, I wouldn't be surprised if there is one or two issues in honoring all of these claims.
I think it's inevitable, Chad. I don't think there's any way the insurance industry will be able to cover everything. I think so. Everyone is obviously rushing to their brokers right now to try and grab whatever's possible, but it's gonna be a huge cash crunch because it's just too much cash at one point in time. I mean, the fact that there were dozens of malls, whole entire shopping malls, every single shop inside them destroyed. The money to go and rebuild those is going to be astronomical, and the fact is a lot of these owners are living on month-to-month basis anyway. Definitely. So it's well, do they have the capital to kind of if insurance cannot cover everything, do they have the capital to rebuild? And a lot of them don't, right?
Yep.
A lot of them put their whole livelihood into these businesses only for it to disappear in the state of a few hours. So that is really heartbreaking. And I think insurance will have to wait and see. I've got no idea how these contracts are written. I've got no idea how they see these sorts of claims. But yeah, it's going to take years if it ever gets back to where it was, just because of the rebuild costs, but also how do you even think about running a business these days? If you're that shop owner, do you want to rebuild there? What are your decisions? You got to think quite carefully about that. And maybe some of them will feel some sort of moral obligation to rebuild, but I don't know. I can see a lot of business owners saying, "Cool, I've learned my lesson. I'm going to go somewhere else," right? Yeah. And that's the sad thing. So we have to wait and see kind of what the rebuild process looks like. But the short-term concern is the food insecurity and things like fuel and that sort of thing. Yep. So we heard a lot of the fuel dispensaries have shut down or closed at least. So I mean, Chad, in the last couple of days, there's been queues at petrol stations for kilometers trying to get fuel because people are worried about fuel insecurity. Yep. If you go to a grocery store at the moment, there's nothing on the shelves. It's kind of similar to that first level 5 lockdown where people are hoarding toilet paper and hoarding food and stuff. So it's the additional panic that comes on top of this that makes it even worse. And that's what's been kind of frustrating on my side, is watching things on social media and watching people panic. And that kind of, it snowballs the effect. It creates more, it creates that self-fulfilling prophecy. Is when everyone's hoarding food and hoarding petrol and stuff, it creates more of a shortage, which then creates more panic. And so it's kind of it's a snowball rolling down a hill. We've got to try and find a way to kind of control it and calm everybody down and try and figure out how we're going to move forward from this thing. And Chad, it's a very difficult situation to be in because there are no real solutions. The truth of the matter is that we live here in the most unequal society on earth. There's no country that is more unequal than South Africa. And unfortunately, if you look at just the history of the world, whenever there's this much inequality, I mean, the poor are going to have to step up and do something at some point. And so we need desperate structural changes. We need good politics, we need leadership, we need all sorts of things. We need vaccines, and it feels a little bit helpless at the moment, Chad, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing is there is nothing you can do. You can go on and virtue signal as much as you like. Ultimately, there's nothing that you can do at the moment. It's not a matter of being able to. I guess there are communities that are kind of doing cleanups, and I suppose that definitely helps. But in terms of that rebuilding, you're going to have to rely on institutions to eventually come around and do their due process. I guess the wider question is just the kind of culture of lawlessness that it seems is happening. I mean, like you say, you've got people live on the news. I mean, I remember watching clips, Barry, of people bombing an ATM, and you've literally got a live news presenter there with all these people in the background, scurrying and trying as hard as they can to get into the actual safe and kind of loot as much cash as possible. Obviously with the shops and all that kind of thing. But we even saw an SPCA looted. I saw coffins looted. I've seen petrol, people with trying to siphon petrol out of tanks and all that kind of stuff. So just in terms of the lawlessness, and I guess trying to stop that from escalating any further. I mean, there's been some calls on Cyril to call a state of emergency, which obviously have far-reaching implications, and I'd definitely be keen to pick your brain on that one. But yeah, like you say, in terms of a solution to this, and just the helplessness, it's the hardest part.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the police have shown to themselves to be completely ineffective. Like you say, it was completely brazen. Chad, you had kids looting, you had teenagers, you had women, children, and like you say, on live TV with no scam, no kind of concern for their safety, because the police just were completely ineffective. And you can point to a lot of different reasons for that. Obviously, the police are very understaffed here in South Africa. We just don't have the money. They're not well trained. But also, I just think that the looting was so widespread and so sudden that the police were just unable to kind of get around everywhere and weren't able to be everywhere. I think we've only got 200,000 police officers in the country, Chad. And so in order for them to get to those hotspots quick enough just didn't happen. And whatever the reasons were, we don't know. And now the military are out and about, but it's almost too late. I mean, all damage has already been done, right? So the military, sure, they can try and avoid other malls being attacked. But for the most part, the damage has already been done. And it's come for a long time where police just don't have that control over society in the way that we see in other countries, and that's it comes down to the crime that we see in the country. It comes down to the corruption and bribery that's rampant throughout the police force. That as citizens we just don't have that trust in our police service. I mean, if you talk to me, Chad, I don't have that trust in that police service. Sure. I don't know if they're acting in my best interest. I don't know if they are going to help me if something goes wrong. And we saw that in just absolute blatant daylight over the last couple of days, and it doesn't fill you with confidence as you look forward. So while most of us in South Africa weren't near the looting, we were kind of watching it through a screen. The anxiety and the fear that it provokes as to where could this looting go and where could this lawlessness go is psychologically very difficult to deal with. As white South Africans, we're in very privileged positions. We're sitting in nice big houses in the warm in the suburbs. We weren't near any of this stuff, but it's very difficult to ignore it. It's very difficult to think like this is on my doorstep in a sense, and how are we going to live our lives going forward knowing that this could happen at any point in time. I don't think this is the end. I think this is just a symptom of the structure and economy that's been built here in South Africa. And so I know I can speak for myself that I've had a very heavy heart and like a very anxious couple of days. And I think it's the case for everyone around the country, is that this is almost a very dangerous red flag that points to some of the big problems we have here in the country. And the fact that it got to the stage that it did in the middle of a pandemic, Chad, is just, it's very tough.
And in such a short time as well. I don't think anyone could have foreseen how quickly it escalated and just became a kind of wide-scale frenzy, really, and across different jurisdictions as well. I mean, there's been some kind of calls for. We heard Becky earlier mention there's 12 individuals who are currently under investigation for potentially masterminding this whole thing. Obviously, there's always going to be a conspiracy theory, no matter what's happening in the world. But just, I guess, given how well this was coordinated, I don't think it would be too far of a reach to jump to that conclusion.
I disagree, Chad. I don't think there's some major coup effort here. I think if you listen to some of the interviews, and some of the journalists are doing amazing work by trying to interview the people who were looting at the time. Yep. And if you listen to some of those interviews and hear some of their reasons, it's not about Zuma. It's not about the politics. It's that these people felt that they'd been let down by the governments. They felt like they had no prospects for a job going forward. They had families at home to feed, and it was just pure desperation. It was opportunistic. I think if you look at kind of mob behavior and you look at the study of group psychology, these things do kind of grow in those ways because people realize maybe there's an opportunity here to get some stuff for my family, and that's why it grows so fast. I don't believe it was coordinated in any serious sense. Obviously there's going to be a portion of that mob that are doing it because of Zuma, and there's going to be a portion who are just criminals and just taking advantage. But I think a lot of them are just poor people who just don't feel like they have any other options, and that's a really sad place to be, is when you have to resort to that to get baby formula for your kids. I mean,
Yeah.
I watched one heartbreaking interview with a guy who was taking a box of baby formula back, and he just says, "I'm trying to keep my kid alive." That's basically what he said to the journalist. And that's just a terrible state of affairs. And so I think yes, of course, the ANC are gonna run with this, and they're gonna try and push this conspiracy as much as they can because it strengthens Cyril's position within the ANC, and the ANC's got a whole bunch of problems they're trying to deal with themselves. So there's gonna be lots of these theories, but Chad, I honestly believe that the cause of this and the reason it got so widespread is simply because of the poverty, so because of the desperation. As in South Africa before the pandemic, we were at like, I think a 40% unemployment rate. We're probably up past 50% at this point,
Yeah.
and that's just not sustainable. You cannot run an economy where half the population isn't working. And especially when 1% of the population controls 70% of the wealth, or whatever the number is, it's just not a viable long-term solution. So it's dangerous. It's a very, very difficult time for the country. And I don't think it's as simple, Chad, as just saying it was coordinated by pro-Zuma supporters.
Sure. And those unemployment rates, Barry, not even considering the youth unemployment rate, which is even higher, quite a lot higher. And so, if you did look, I guess just look at the footage, which is not scientific in any way, shape, or form. But certainly a lot of youth who just were kind of sitting around, had nothing else to do, and had no other commitments at the end of the day, and like you say, jumped on the bandwagon, just took opportunity where it kind of presented itself, and those kind of youth unemployment rates are heartbreaking. It talks to, I guess, just the lack of of schooling and high quality education, in South Africa, and that again is just another devastating problem to deal with. State of emergency. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's too late. I mean, I think if they were going to call that, they need to do it like days ago. I think that at the moment, there's like I say, there's still some isolated incidents still happening in KZN, but for the most part, the Gauteng pieces have been somewhat stabilized. I think Soweto and Alexandra, the two major kind of poor neighborhoods, have really struggled in the last couple of days. But there's no point in a state of emergency right now. I mean, I think the kind of feeling in the country, from what I can gauge, is that we need to kind of process what's happened and start rebuilding things. With the military out and about, I don't see any real benefit to a state of emergency, and I think it would cause more political and bureaucratic nonsense than it's worth at this stage. And so, yeah, I think it came too late. I think Cyril spoke too late. I think there was radio silence from the government for the first 24 hours of the riots, which was worrying, because these politicians were just sitting behind their Twitter accounts and just kind of enjoying the drama unfold. So yeah, I don't think it's worth it. What do you think?
Well, you see, a statement like that, Barry, the worrying silence, to me points to what I hinted at earlier, and I guess that you just need reasons for why it took so long to respond, where you need this decisive leadership, fast action, especially when things were unfolding the way that they were, and yeah, to see ministers visiting the scenes once the military was there and it was stabilized and there was nothing else going back to, really just seemed like a pointless endeavor to me, where there was very clearly very worrying scenes a day before, and a lot more leadership could have happened a bit sooner, but anyway, nothing more, I guess, that can be changed on that front. Don't know what else to say, Barry. It's a worrying state of affairs. I think everyone around the world who has any links to South Africa is very concerned. Ultimately, there's not much that we can do, I guess, other than just letting the situation come under control, letting the state take a handle on it. I suppose it would be good for international coverage, because any international aid or assistance in this rebuild effort will certainly be appreciated. But aside from that, Barry, I don't really have much more to add.
Yeah, so I just want to add two more things. One kind of connects what you just said is about the media coverage. I just want to talk to everyone who's listening right now. I don't know how many people who hear this, but the amount of misinformation going around on social media at the moment is unbelievable. And some of the stuff that I saw friends of mine and acquaintances of mine share online were just not helpful at all. And like I understand it comes from a good place and everyone's kind of shocked and all over the place, but I just want to call for everyone to fact check your stuff and make sure that what you're sharing is actually legit and actually helpful. Because the problem with international media at the moment is it's not showing a nuanced version of the state of affairs. It's not talking to the real core issues that we're trying to deal with. It's very easy to kind of run with a narrative and kind of just ignore a lot of the complications and the complexities. So yeah, I think it's very important that if you are going to share stuff about this, if you are going to try and contribute in that way, is to please do your fact checking properly and make sure what you're sharing is actually legit. And the second piece is actually what we can do. So I've been quite buoyed and quite inspired by some of the scenes I've seen about these rebuilding, about these cleanups and whatnot. There are tons of Facebook groups that people are getting onto to kind of help. There's lots of construction companies that have been offering to go and help build, and there's lots of people trying to get on the ground. I mean, if you look at pictures of Durban right now, it's spotless, Chad, because there were thousands of people who went out and cleaned up the streets and whatnot, and the same in Johannesburg. And so I think as South Africans, we are so resilient as a people. It's one of the reasons I love this country so much, is that we've been through so much chaos over the past 20 years and we keep finding a way to step forward. And so even though I was desperate and helpless for a couple of days, Chad, I'm starting to feel that resiliency again. And I still believe in this country, as crazy sounds. I still believe that we can move forward and kind of rebuild in a sense, and it's going to take action. It's going to take people actually stepping up and doing things, not just typing things on Twitter, not just sharing hashtags, but actually contributing where they can. And so if you do have skills, if you are able to go and clean up, if you do have skills, if you can help small businesses in some way, if you can build a business of your own, all of these things are what we can do to be practically useful in these situations. And it can feel overwhelming to look at the scale of the problem and just be like, okay, what's my little bit going to do? Like, what is my drop in the ocean going to matter? But that's just the wrong message. And unfortunately, it's not going to help anybody to do that. My biggest fear, Chad, is that because of this, we're going to see even more skilled, educated people leaving the country and just taking their skills and their capital and their money with them. And that is really sad for me, because we need those people to stay here and build this country. We need people like me who have skills and educations and opportunities to go and build businesses that are going to employ people. And so I want to call for people that I know everyone's desperate to get on a plane to London or to Australia or to the US. I'm desperate for people to stick around and kind of build this country, because I really feel some sort of moral calling to kind of help in here in South Africa, and I think that we shouldn't lose sight of that. This country is amazing. It's got so much potential, and I don't want people to get nihilistic about the fact that it feels overwhelming, because it does feel overwhelming. I get that, but there are things that you can do, and if it feels like something that is calling you, there are opportunities to help, and so I just thought I'd say that for anyone who's listening.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. I think that's needed. Definitely needed some kind of calls for calm, especially when everything seems like it's just a total state of chaos. I guess you need that calm to kind of stabilize things and get back to normal again eventually. So we'll obviously monitor that. We'll touch through the progress of that in the next couple of weeks, but like we said, it's going to be more than a couple of weeks before South Africa is back on its feet again. Barry, talking about some other stuff that happened in the world this week. I almost feel like I need to play the jingle again just to get us to reframe us a little bit. Just a little palate cleanser. But yeah, let's talk about kind of leaving the earth, kind of getting a complete moment of air and breath away from everything when things are just going too crazy on earth. There's an amount of money that you can pay everyone to leave the planet. momentarily, albeit. But yeah, quite an exciting story. Why don't you talk us through it, Barry?
Yeah, Chad. So this is something I'm very excited about, as I'm sure you can imagine with my obsession with space. And we are watching a space race happen in front of our eyes between some very influential billionaires, Chad. Of course, being Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and now Richard Branson, who, for the very first time, jumped in his Virgin Galactic space plane rocket thingy, Chad, and went to the outer to almost to the boundary of space. So it's been a very big discussion as to whether he actually went into space or not. It depends on how you kind of distinguish what space is. But he got on this rocket and went up out of the Earth's atmosphere and kind of orbited a little bit before coming down to land, Chad, and sent some really inspiring footage of him inside this spacecraft, showing what Virgin Galactic is supposed to be. So the whole mission of Virgin Galactic is to make space travel commercially viable, Chad. So the idea is that eventually you and me are going to have a chance to buy a seat on one of these planes/spacecraft to go into space and see Earth from the heavens. And so it was very exciting. It all went perfectly well. Nothing happened that was untoward. And really inspiring moment, Chad, for Richard Branson to go into space. Someone that I've looked up to for my entire life.
Yeah.
I think he's absolutely amazing. And I got a little bit emotional watching him in space, talking about dreams and talking about what it took to make that happen. And yet another opportunity, Chad, for us to maybe escape Earth one day.
Oh, yeah, escaping Earth. I mean, amazing story. And we were just playing some of the scenes. This is a Virgin Galactic video. But yeah, absolutely amazing. I mean, Richard Branson, we heard so much of him and his, crazy kind of an entrepreneurial rise in the last couple of decades. And I kind of feel like he's been pretty quiet over the last couple of years, which is what I like. He's been kind of building away. I mean, we knew this was coming along for some time, his kind of wanting to get into space and space travel, but I kind of feel like it's he's just been ticking along, working hard, getting it, making this a reality, and now you have this beautiful unveiling, and say it's not space, Barry, but he was floating. He was still at that kind of zero gravity, which counts in my book. And the fact that this will be scalable and you'll be able to do this. He certainly looked a little bit scared and kind of apprehensive in a few moments, I think. But I mean, he is an entrepreneur. He's not a kind of astronaut for a living. So yeah, really, really great to see these kind of successful space missions. We've had so much of this news in the last couple of years, really, Barry, where, before that, it was, many, many years before.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we're living in a very exciting time when it comes to space travel, Chad, because we're breaking through so many boundaries of what was possible. And I think that when we look back on this period in time, it's going to be that catalyzing moment that hopefully should open up space travel for everybody. So, of course, Elon Musk has been doing his thing with reusable rockets and proving just how you can bring the cost of space travel way down. And what Virgin Galactic managed to do with this thing is develop basically a plane that carries the spacecraft up into like halfway up and then launch the craft from there and have a much more affordable, I say affordable, relatively affordable compared to the space travel of old.
What's the damage, Barry?
Ways to get you into space. So Chad, apparently, so this is all rumors, of course, because they're still figuring this out. But it sounds like when Virgin Galactic finally opens up their online booking system, it's going to cost you just $250,000, Chad. That's all it's going to cost you to go into one of these planes and be in space for a couple of minutes. So $250,000. Chad, the question is, two questions. Number one, are you curious about this? Would you see yourself doing this? And number two, what would the price have to come down to make it viable for you?
So number two is kind of null and void because it really falls over at number one. This is nothing that I'm interested in doing, Barry. I'm more than happy to have my feet planted firmly on the earth and watch this kind of high resolution footage that is already being represented by everyone else who funds this footage being put out. So certainly on my side, I'm happy I love travel, Barry, but space travel is one level too far for me. You, however, have a very different stance. So why don't you give us your number for your second point there? What would it take?
Oh, Chad, it's difficult because, as you know, the rand conversion to dollar makes it very
Yeah.
challenging. So it's gonna have to come down quite a bit at this stage, and until I'm rich and famous, then it won't be a problem. But I think I've mentioned to you before, Chad, this is something I desperately want to do. Like on my bucket list, I do want to go to space at some point in my life. I don't want to go on Virgin Galactic's first flight, or maybe even their 58th flight, right? I want to
Yeah.
see a couple people do it first. But assuming that it gets to a point where it's relatively kind of normal, then I would really love to do it. And so I'm kind of imagining, Chad, that in 30 to 40 years time, I mean, if the vision kind of plays out the way these guys wanted to, they wanted to become relatively stable and relatively normal, right? And it's worth mentioning that there's a couple other companies in this race, including Jeff Bezos, who, as we chatted a couple of weeks ago, has stepped away from Amazon to go completely on Blue Origin, which is his rocket company. And so he is doing a similar sort of flight, I think, in the next couple of week or two, Chad.
Cool.
So he kind of lost the billionaire space race to Branson, and I'm sure he's a bit upset with that.
Yeah.
But he's also going to try and prove that his company can do it as well. So lots of competition in the space. I think the price will come down over time, and so 250K is kind of where it is now, but who knows what it looks like in 20 years time, Chad. And for me, I don't know why, but I've just got this absolute hankering for space. I've always been fascinated by it, and I would love to do it at some point.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, everyone, puts their. I don't even have a bucket list, Barry. I best need to get writing
Chad,
one. I think you've got yours on your website, don't you?
I do. barrymaurice.com/bucket-list, and you can check out my bucket list.
Epic. I mean, people have their bucket lists and put, places and things they want to see and do there. Going to space, I mean, that is ambitious if there is an ever a word really for ambition. But Barry, just talking about flight, and I must be honest, I did want to have this on the podcast as a section of its own. But when you asked me earlier what it was like being on a plane again, it just felt so foreign to me that I kind of got sentimental almost at the prospect of commercial flight. And just standing there and watching a vehicle. I know this sounds ridiculous to anyone listening. This must sound ridiculous, but watch a vehicle reach a certain speed on the ground to the point where it can lift off the ground, ascend to a certain level, and travel to another place, come down completely safely. It all happens, so fluidly. I think it's amazing. I really do. And when you actually do some research and look back into how long commercial flight has actually been around, it's not been that long. I mean, obviously for us in our lifetimes, it's just a normal thing. But when you go and look back and look at the very first flight in the black and white photos, and you just look at, I guess, how far airplanes have come themselves as well. This first commercial flight photograph that I saw, I mean, I don't have it handy right now, almost looks like a kind of war type plane. I would feel very scared to get onto that thing. It's just incredible how far we've come in this field, and I can't help but not still get sort of sentimental about it. It's just an incredible feat of humankind.
I don't think it's ridiculous at all. I think it's I feel the same way, Chad, is that we take it for granted because it's so common now and it's so cheap now compared to what it once was. But the ability to get into this metal tube, like you say, with hundreds of other strangers, and kind of trust some dude in the cockpit who's going to fly you across these borders, land you in a brand new place, and it unlocks travel for you. Like, I mean, Chad, I know travel is a big part of your life and a big part of my life as well. And some of the most amazing experiences of my life happened elsewhere in the world, and I just wouldn't have that opportunity if commercial flight wasn't as affordable as it is and as open as it is at the moment. So I'm completely with you. I'm dying to get on a plane, Chad. I've been stuck in the same place for probably 2 years now, after spending the previous year and a half traveling all the time and living out of a suitcase. And so I'm dying to get on a plane again, and I think I'm going to have that same sort of realization, Chad, that we take this thing for granted. As humans, we've invented this incredible technology and this not just technology of the plane itself, but the entire infrastructure around airports around the
Definitely.
world and how
Yeah.
it all works together and bringing the costs down by flying these planes time and time again. I don't think we actually realize how important commercial air flight has been for the development of the world and for sharing of knowledge, sharing of experiences, and kind of making it more globalized. It certainly changed my life, and so yeah, it's I'm dying to do it, Chad. I'm jealous that you got to get there before me.
All in time, Barry. I hope things get reach a level of normality at some stage once that vaccination program picks up on that side. But just in terms of how long it actually has been around, I just had a quick Google, and yeah, I mean, sort of 100 years ago, more or less, give or take a couple of years. 100 years ago, the first kind of passenger embarked on a plane to go somewhere, and that's really not a long period of time, Barry. And now we're talking about private individuals being able to get into another type of plane and go into space. It's remarkable. It's just remarkable. At the end of our last episode, we ended off with some kind of taunts, if you'd like, where the football was coming home, the UEFA, Euro tournament, Italy versus England. We all now know what happened. Barry, what's your take on it?
Chad, unfortunately, football didn't come home. It
No.
actually went to Rome at the end of the day. Italy coming through on penalties, and a very, very interesting match. I think the whole world was kind of glued to their screens, and
Yeah, definitely.
Wembley was full and absolutely chaotic. I saw people fighting the security guards to get into Wembley. It was a whole real thing. And unfortunately, right at the end, England went down on penalties, as is unfortunately becoming way too common for the English football side. They really do have a way of messing it up in the penalties. And so, Chad, from a neutral perspective, it was high drama. It was incredibly exciting to watch. I mean, England scored in the first couple of minutes with an absolutely amazing goal from Luke Shaw, and it felt like the whole country believed, and they believed this thing was possible. And then Italy then proceeded to dominate the next 70 minutes of the game. England held on and held on and held on as long as they could, but it felt like it was coming, and eventually Italy equalized. And then we kind of edged nervously towards the penalties, Chad, and then things didn't go well on the penalties. So very exciting on the neutral point of view, Chad, but lots of drama, lots of chaos.
Tons of drama. I mean, some people watched the game and actually said it was quite uneventful, boring at times. I mean, it was a 2-hour football match, so I understand that stance, but I thought it was quite gripping at times. First half, England held the ball quite dominantly, and in the second half, well, that changed dramatically. And like you said, it was just a matter of time. Italy played incredibly well, although there were a lot of cards and some dirty sort of playing that we saw. But I kind of wanted to talk about the kind of scandals of the tournament, not kind of linger on them too much, Barry, but in the kind of preceding game, that got England into this game. I had no idea. But there was a bit of a laser scandal where a laser was kind of shone in the eye of the goalie of the opposition right at the moment of, I think it was the penalty that England kind of got, I think, to get 2-1 was it to Denmark. And just that kind of really bad sportsmanship from the English supporters, and we kind of all heard the booing at various times in the game and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, that's just not good sportsmanship. It's not what you want in any sport. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Chad, I think it made things a little bit more sour. I think England got such a rich football history, and of course they got such passionate fans, and they got the best league in the world in the Premier League, but they do have a reputation for being really terrible, like sportsmanships, at least for the fans. Like the players are a different story, but the fans themselves, the amount of hooliganism in English football is crazy. Like you said, the laser thing, it's a very common thing actually in the Premier League and in a lot of England, unfortunately, is that people in the crowd will shine lasers on the goalkeepers to try and get them to miss. But that's very dangerous, and it can really damage like eyesight, and it's not a good thing at all. Never mind the sportsmanship part of it. And also like the booing. I found in the Euro 2020 final, to boo the entire Italian national anthem,
Crazy.
it's just absolutely crazy to me. Like, that's not a moment to boo. That's a moment to kind of celebrate the fact that the country has got to the final and at least give them the respect they deserve. I'm sure it made the win for Italy that much sweeter, the fact that they were booed the entire game and still came out with the victory. So yeah, it's a little bit sour, unfortunately. I think what happens when people get drunk in those stadiums is that the behavior goes out the window, and there's so much passion. They desperately want to win so badly that they're willing to do anything, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I also think it's very unfortunate. And I mean, I kind of echo your sentiment on the players. Although, there was a part that I kind of, obviously, I'm staying in England now, and I've kind of adopted it as my home. So it would be easy for me to kind of just pass all these things off and just be like, oh no, it's all good. But I think it's, I think you need to take the positive with the negatives. And I mean, I felt the players kind of took the loss a little bit badly, where you've got this award ceremony that's happening, and the players kind of bow their heads, and the medals get thrown on, and straight away they don't even take 2 steps just to get off camera, which is all they need to do. 2 or 3 steps, get off camera, accept your number 2 medal graciously. They straight away pull that medal off. And, it just left a kind of sour taste in my mouth, at least. I'm not sure if you felt the same, Barry.
That one I don't see as that big of a problem, Chad, because everybody does it. If you look at any sport around the world, I mean, I've even done it in an intervarsity tournament where we lost the final and I was pissed off and I took that medal off. But luckily the world's cameras weren't pointed towards me. I think they should do away with silver medals in these tournaments. They should just shake hands and just give the gold medals to the winners, because the silver medalists don't want it, because it's a reminder of what happened in the match. And so I've got no problem with them being disappointed and frustrated, because that's what sport is. And so I can completely relate to that sentiment. But I do think it's a bit silly to do the silver medals when everyone's going to take it off straight away. So I think I should either get rid of it, or England should tell their players, like you say, just get off camera before you do it. Just like act like you're happy with it, and just get off camera, and then you can take it off and throw it in the river or whatever you want to do. So yeah, I don't see much of a problem with that. I just think that's the nature of sport. You want this thing so badly, and the disappointment, it hurts.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, I'm new to this football thing. I've made a couple of attacking comments on this very podcast before, but yeah, I've definitely enjoyed the Euro tournament. So whether that kind of gets me into the sport a bit more, and I kind of watch maybe some Champions League matches and all that kind of stuff. We'll definitely, Championship and Champions League, we'll definitely see in the future. Barry, let's then move on to our next segment. Stuff I found interesting. Couple of things we found interesting this week too, while we were very upset and sad and whatever the case is. We still found some stuff interesting, so that's always good. This one is, again, very, very quick. So I'm in Madeira. My grandmother lives in Madeira. And there's this whole thing where basically, Barry, I can't speak Portuguese. And my gran lived in South Africa, so she can speak a bit of English, but it's very basic level English. So I went to visit her, and it was wonderful, of course, to see her again. But I think we both got a bit frustrated at just being able to communicate. So eventually, when I kind of left and got back home, got back to the hotel, whatever the case is, chatted to my mom. My mom said, my gran thought I was looking so good, so much better than the last time I went, which was not too long ago. I think it was November 2019. And by good, she meant your face looks fuller. I said to my mom straight away, that's because I'm picked up weight during lockdown. Like I'm fat, like I'm feeling fat. Where to my gran, it's just completely different. She's like, you're looking healthy. And it just, I found it really interesting, just the cultural differences in interpretation of physical conditioning. And this is not something new to me. I mean, I've known it in South Africa as well, where, in some of the African cultures, the bigger the person, the kind of healthier they are, because there's kind of connotations there to wealth and being able to afford food and feed your family and all that kind of thing. I thought it was fascinating, especially to see it come from my grand side. Do you have any thoughts?
I think that's fascinating, Chad. Thank you for bringing that up. That's such an interesting topic because it reminds us how relative all of these social preconceptions actually are. So, like, what is beautiful is completely culturally contextual, right? What is seen as healthy is completely contextual in the culture that you're in. And it just reminds us how ridiculous a lot of our assumptions are, right? How we get caught up in this idea that we have to look a certain way or be a certain way or talk a certain way because of the situation that we're in and kind of the country we're in or the city we're in or the family we're in even. But all of those things don't actually matter because you can leave your context and discover, oh, wait, there's 1,000 other things I can do. There's 1,000 other ways I can look at this. And that's the beauty of travel, going back to the kind of the flight conversation earlier. The beauty of travel is realizing this, that there are 1,000 other ways to live life. And just because you're not fitting into your particular cultural context in a certain aspect means nothing when it comes to, like you say, you go to your grandmother and she says you look amazing. So I think it's a good reminder for us not to take ourselves so seriously and to realize that so much of the pressure we put on ourselves comes from comparing ourselves to people around us, right? Kind of we look at the people around us and we kind of rank ourselves subconsciously, like, where am I in this pecking order? Where do I kind of stand? What is my status in this community? And that impacts a lot of our decisions. It gets in the way a lot and gives us a lot of anxiety in a lot of cases. And so I think it's a beautiful story, a beautiful reminder of that, Chad, that maybe with a little bit of extra lockdown weight, we're actually healthier than we thought.
I still hold my same view, Barry, but it certainly makes me feel a little bit better. I'm definitely not going to deny that. It certainly makes me feel a bit better. On your side, you found something else interesting, which I find to be quite funny. You got to love a little bit of a take back.
Yes, Chad. So we chatted a lot in the past about how every single app across the world is including stories now, some form of stories of these 24-hour disappearing videos and photos. We kind of made a few jokes about how every app is doing it, and we're waiting for Microsoft Excel to bring out Excel stories. We made all those jokes. And one of those companies was, of course, Twitter. And we've seen Twitter releasing a whole bunch of new features in the last year, more features in a year than they probably have across their whole entire company's lifetime. And one of those features was their version of stories called Fleets, Chad. And we chatted briefly about it. I posted like 2 of them and got 0 engagements and kind of stopped using it entirely. And they announced this week that they're discontinuing Fleets. And if you read their blog post, it's quite a funny blog post to read because basically all it says is, no one used this, so we're cutting it out. so from the 1st of August, I believe, Fleets are no longer, Chad, and you will no longer be able to share those wonderful Twitter stories with the world.
I see you've now followed that Excel page I recommended last week, Barry. With that meme on the Excel stories. But it's so true. And I remember even when you brought it up the first time, you kind of had your doubts about the feature. Had to give it a test yourself, but had your doubts nevertheless. And so I think it's a bold move to kind of be able to say, well, okay, cool, we tried, it didn't work. We know who we are. Let's kind of go back to the basics. So I think it's a positive thing to see companies realize where things are going wrong and kind of adapt and just not throw extra resources at maintaining that feature, especially if the users had no need. Barry, let's then move on to our next segment. Looking ahead. All right, we've been talking quite a bit about, on the subject of Twitter. We're going to stay on the social media theme. We're talking today again about Instagram, and we've been just talking, I guess, about the evolution of the platform, how various functionalities have moved around, how it's been becoming a little bit more bloated, I suppose, with all these extra features over time, and basically, I haven't followed him, but the CEO of Instagram has obviously his own Instagram page, and unlike MySpace, he is not the first friend you have when you join the platform. Do you remember that, Barry?
Tom, good old Tom. Man. What a champion! What a champion!
The most friends in the world, Tom did. But yeah, you can go and follow Instagram CEO. His name is Adam Mosseri, and he put out a video. I mean, this was I think in our break, Barry, when we weren't podcasting, and I kind of missed it in our first episode, but came across it again this week, so I thought let's chat about it. And he basically talked about the vision for the platform. And some of the things that they were going to do. So the four sort of subgroups were creators, video, shopping, and messaging. And I think obviously we'll kind of see how that all unfolds over time. But talking about just what Instagram was and what it is now going to be, it's very clear that Instagram is no longer an image sharing site, specifically on video. And I think no one can kind of explain it better than Adam himself. So let me play a quick sound bite on the strategy on video for Instagram in the future.
But today I actually want to talk a bit more about video. And I want to start by saying we're no longer a photo sharing app or a square photo sharing app. The number one reason people say that they use Instagram in research is to be entertained. So people are looking to us for that. So actually this past week in our internal all hands, I shared a lot about what we're trying to do to lean into that trend, into entertainment and into video. Because let's be honest, there's some really serious competition right now. TikTok is huge, YouTube is even bigger, and there's lots of other upstarts as well. And so people are looking to Instagram to be entertained. There's stiff competition and there's more to do, then we have to embrace that. And that means change. So what you're gonna see over the next couple months really is us start to experiment more in the space of what we call recommendations. So showing you things in feed that you may not be following yet. We just started testing an early version of this last week. This week is a new version that's coming out with topics where you can say which topics you want to see more of or less of. But we're also going to be experimenting with how do we embrace video more broadly. Full screen, immersive, entertaining, mobile first video. And so you'll see us do a number of things or experiment with a number of things in this space over the coming months.
I find that fascinating, Barry, just to see how this platform has evolved. And to be completely honest, I actually saw a couple of months ago, a little survey pop up on my Instagram. I'd be curious to know if you saw that too. Basically asking me what I use the platform for. And I guess this is where they gained all of that data from, and that people are looking to be entertained. I specifically answered all of my questions, not kind of, kind of going away from the case of video on the app, because I like it as a square grid photo sharing app. But obviously, I was the anomaly, and obviously there were a lot more answers and to people who are liking the features of Reels and longer form video. So talking about this, obviously we spoken about this before and kind of aired our concerns about full screen and having video vertically versus horizontally, all of this kind of thing. It seems like this is what they're going to do, and your feed is now going to be filled by recommendations rather than, obviously not entirely, but a lot more recommendations of videos that they think you'll find entertaining rather than the people you've chosen to follow.
I hate this, Chad. I hate this. And it blows my mind. I never thought I'd hear the sentence Instagram is no longer a photo sharing app. I mean, that is an incredible thing to say. And I think that's why so many people have been discussing this, Chad. And it's very clear that they are struggling to match TikTok. It's very clear that TikTok is kind of growing at an exponential rate, and I think they're much more powerful than we even realize, Chad. And this is a direct kind of response to what TikTok's been able to do. And so, yeah, I don't understand this move. I really don't. I think Instagram had this absolutely hallowed place that was the home of photos. And it doesn't make sense to me why they would ruin that. They could easily go and build Reels as a separate app. They could easily pour lots of resources into a separate video app and kind of have a go at competing with TikTok in that way. But to dilute the feed and to start putting in recommendations that you aren't following and kind of making it more TikTok-esque, you're going to lose that magic of what Instagram is and can be, in my opinion. And I think that they're going to struggle to beat TikTok because the algorithm TikTok has and the amount of the data they have behind those videos is unbelievable. And I just don't know Instagram have got the scale, of course. They've got, I don't know how many billion people on the platform. But I don't like this at all. I really don't. And if I look at my own behavior on Instagram, I certainly have been spending more time in stories than I have in the feed than in the past. So like stories has been is a really big feature, and it's a lot of the reason I do go to it. So I understand that element of entertainment, but it's low quality entertainment. I don't like the fact that I'm going to stories, right? I don't like the fact that I'm going to there. I'd much prefer to go through reels and see beautiful photos and see inspiring like pieces of content in the visual space. And the same with reels. I kind of made a joke a couple months ago that reels were nonsense, but I have been pulled into a few rabbit holes over the last couple of weeks, and I have found myself scrolling through reels for longer than I would like to admit, Chad. So they are addictive. I certainly understand that, but it's such low quality entertainment. Like when I finish an hour of scrolling through reels, I feel terrible about it. I'm like, what the hell did I just watch for an hour? How did I just sink all that time into these nonsense? And so yeah, I don't like this, Chad. I think it's a mistake from Instagram, but what do I know? Apparently I'm not the target market.
I feel exactly the same, and I guess it just talks to the ultimate aim of all of these companies, and that is to make profit. Ultimately, what they're trying to do is monetize your attention, and what they've said is there's a competitor in attention, and he's very openly said, you know, TikTok is huge, and we have to do something. It's all about getting the attention that is currently being diverted elsewhere. It's got nothing to do with you know, the kind of initial cause behind inventing Instagram for the first place, having these wonderful high quality images. I suppose not that high quality, but having you know, feed, being able to just look zone specifically into images. You know, Twitter handles the words, YouTube handles the video. This is the place that you need to come to look at images, and you know, that's just changed completely. And Ray basically echoes your sentiment, Barry, which is that he's also disappointed with his real viewing. Thanks for tuning in, Ray. Appreciate it. Yeah, but it's crazy. It's just crazy that this is how the platform's evolved, and ultimately, like I said, it just talks to the reason these big social media companies are in existence, to monetize attention, which is terrifying, really. But I guess it's the reality, and we know that.
So Chad, I've got a question for you on the back of that. Is that you're a photographer, you're a video creator, you're like an aspiring creative on these platforms. Like, what are you going to do now? Like, do you think you're going to lean into this new direction and start creating for these new formats? Like, how do you think about building an audience going forward? Because the way that we've kind of been taught for the last couple of years, you build an Instagram following through lots of photos and hashtags and all these kind of old school ways of building audiences. Even though when I say old school, a couple of years ago only. How are you thinking about moving forward when you're building an audience? Are you thinking about creating vertical video, or is this something you think you might have to lean into, even though you might not like it? Like, where do you see the creators going forward?
Yeah, I mean, generally in the creator space, I mean, obviously I follow a whole bunch of different creators who have started transitioning. Did
you see Peter McKinnon's video on this topic by any chance?
I haven't seen it. It popped up in my feed, Barry, along with many others. I haven't seen it. But you know, if there's any kind of views that you wanted to bring up of his from that video, I'd be very keen to hear them.
So why I think his video is so interesting is that he's known as this like absolute film like buff and nerd, and he's very, very particular about his production. His production quality is some of the best in the world, and he's kind of one of the people you would think is going to stick to the highly produced, highly like focused content on YouTube. And he made this video talking about exactly this, about how TikTok and Instagram Reels and all these things are taking over the attention of the consumer, and what his strategies are going forward. And it feels like he's going to start leaning into that. And he's going to start leaning into making more vertical video and less produced video. And it felt like a very out of character video for him to make, because as you know, like he is an absolute like purist in that sense. Yeah. And so I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this topic, Chad. And I would encourage you to go and watch that if you get a chance, because it felt very out of character. And it was one of the stranger Peter McKinnon videos I've seen, because it's a weird one.
Is he trolling us? I mean, I got to go and see the video myself. But that definitely doesn't sound like him. I mean, I basically hold to, I think, what you would expect from me. And I'm not going to be leaning into these features at all. Just purely, Barry, because it is vertical video. and it kind of, it doesn't achieve any of what I wanted to achieve. I mean, if you look at the reels, a lot of it is kind of, like you say, very low value. It's very much kind of humor, tips and tricks to do this or that. I mean, a lot of people are kind of just trying to ride the algorithm, and so you hear all of these tips like people saving posts is really good. So what do people do? Well, they put out all these tips and tricks and all of those kind of things to refer back to later on. And so I don't know. I kind of like to still believe that I would do something because I want to do it rather than because that's where the following is. That's where the platform is going. That's what everyone else is doing. It kind of just doesn't resonate to what I would do. And so if the platform evolves and horizontal video becomes much more of a thing, and it's integrated nicer into the grid, and it becomes a place that I can then upload the videos that I'm already producing, potentially repurpose them somewhat, then maybe I'd consider it. But at this point in time, I guess I've kind of accepted the fact that I've missed the wave of Instagram and picking up a following there. And so, at the moment you can put as many hashtags as you like. You're going to get the same number of views. It's all your friends, the same number of likes. I've kind of just accepted that, and it's just become a place for me to put stuff just so I can have for myself, really. Whereas I think, like you say, lots of people are kind of chasing the audiences, and I kind of hope, I'm kind of a bit romantic in that sense, where I kind of hope it just happens organically, and you don't have to kind of try too hard or try and be something that you're not, that's a view I hold. How about you?
No, I can't expect that from you, Chad. So I'm glad that you're sticking to your guns there. I think that you have to understand like where your strengths lie, and like you say, a lot of these kind of short form videos very much about short form humor. It's about jumping on social trends. It's about kind of following the crowds. And I mean, if you scroll through reels for an hour, Chad, 70% of it is just new takes on the exact same idea or the exact same joke or the same trend, right? So it's not creative in that way. It's just about understanding what gets attention, and it's like junk food. It's video junk food. That's kind of how I see it. Whereas YouTube still has a huge community of people who are interested in well-produced pieces, in good storytelling, in kind of different takes on different subjects. And so I think it makes a lot of sense for you to focus your attention there and kind of keep building the things that you are building because of what you like. What I'm hoping, Chad, is that what this will prompt maybe is a couple of entrepreneurs to start new photo sharing apps. And maybe you see a new kind of format or a new idea, maybe a cleaner, more minimalist type photo sharing app to compete with the likes of Instagram, right? We've chatted about how these social media companies are so big and so difficult to compete with. This is an opportunity for some smart people to build the photo sharing apps of the future that maybe shy away from this attention junk food and maybe focuses on more kind of artistic kind of things. I think there's a couple of these. There's one of the V that I can't remember right now that's kind of focused on very high quality videos. I mean, not videos, photos. And so hopefully we're going to see more of those going forward, Chad. And maybe that's where you grow the audience in the years to come.
Yeah, and also higher quality as well, Barry, because like I said, Instagram has the restriction in the number of pixels you can upload in a photo, and so for people who do take photography seriously, you are very limited in that sense. And so, like you say, to see another app come along that will be able to hit all of those, all of those points, I think it could do well. You've got cameras being sold left, right, and center, and all of these people who want to pick up this wonderful art, they need a place to put it. And so you do have Flickr, which I've used once or twice before, but I've never kind of religiously posted there. And so it would be great to have more of a kind of social media type site that lets you upload this high quality imagery, and kind of take us back to I think what Instagram aimed to do at some point in time. Barry, we've got one more thing on the agenda in Develop and Grow, but I am aware we're a bit over time, kind of 15 minutes. Do you want to do it, or you want to chat on it next week?
Chad, it's your story, so it's your call, buddy. I'm not sure how you wanted to tackle it, so I'm going to leave it in your capable hands.
Okay, let's quickly move on to Develop and Grow.
Develop and Grow.
to be completely honest, I don't think we're going to be here too long, Barry. Not too much here. But obviously, I've touched on at the top of the episode the fact that I'm in Madeira at the moment. And I am here alone. So as much as I did visit my gran and whatever the case is, I am here alone. And it's just kind of, I mean, Barry, you and I have spoken offline a couple of times about this. But enjoying experiences by yourself without other people with you is a completely different. It's a completely different kettle of fish to being able to kind of feed off another person and feed off excitement and novelty and enjoyment in a particular moment, and I guess then be able to reflect back on it later on in life with a level of nostalgia. And so this trip has been interesting to me. I've heard a lot of people who have very strong views about solo travel and how important it is, and I guess just important to be by yourself and kind of have a better sense of who you are. Ultimately, because you have no one else having any play on the decisions, timelines, what you're going to do at a particular time, what you want to eat, all of those kind of things. And while, individually those might seem pretty insignificant things, when you throw yourself into that situation for a week, it really is very interesting. And to be honest, I've enjoyed parts of it, but for the most part, it's kind of call to home how important it is to have people in your life, and not just a romantic partner, but friends, and acquaintances, and just human connection. I mean, we've said so many times before, Barry, that we kind of what is the word? We're kind of what is the word I'm looking for? We're beings that need each other. We need human connection. We're social beings. That's the word that I was looking for. We're social beings. And, to be thrown into a different country where, the majority of people don't speak the language you do, you're kind of isolated and by yourself. And while there are some wonderful, refreshing, enlightening experiences that you'll have in that time, I still think with other people to share it with, it's just a completely different experience, and it's kind of made me miss it in a way. But I know you have thoughts on solo travel too, so I'm very keen to hear those.
Yeah, so I completely understand where you're coming from, and I understand that sentiment very well. I have a slightly contrarian take, as you're alluding to, in that I've found incredible amounts of value in solo travel. So kind of my background, most of my international travel has been solo over the last couple of years. Cool. So I haven't been in long-term relationships during those periods, and I found myself doing lots and lots of solo travel. For my job for 18 months, I did it all the time. I was barely in Joburg, right? And so what I think about solo travel is that I think it's an acquired skill. I think you get better at enjoying it and better at appreciating it over time. Chad, you've kind of been spoiled because you and Kel, your fiance, have been together for so long now. A lot of your travel has been with her and been with other friends of yours. And so you've never really had the opportunity to do long-term solo travel, right? And it's like you say, it's difficult because it's lonely and it's weird, and you can't kind of share those moments with people, and you get home and you want to tell people stories, and people don't really care about your travel stories as much as you think they're gonna, right? And so it's difficult in that sense because you're going through this experience yourself, and like you say, you have this desire to share it with somebody. And if it's just you, it can be a little bit sad sometimes. It can be a little bit kind of meh in a way.
Yeah.
But what I'd say is that there is value to be discovered in those moments. And if you're able to kind of go through those times and see it for what it is and kind of enjoy that experience in a different way, you can learn a hell of a lot about yourself. I feel like I'm a completely different person because I went through Japan and Amsterdam and New York and all of these places by myself, exploring the city, going to all these museums, going to events by myself with no one to share it with. I'm a different person because of those experiences. And over time, I got better and better at learning how to do that, right? Learning when are the moments that I do need social connection? When should I go to a bar and try and chat to people? Or when can I spend 6 hours myself? And of course, this is going to come down to your personality. So my personality is very introverted, so it's a lot easier for me than say an extrovert might find it. But what I'd say is that there is magic in solo travel. And if you speak to anyone who's done extended periods of solo travel, they'll tell you about these stories, and they'll tell you about how they've learned about themselves. And it just comes down to accepting the situation for what it is and learning some of the skills as to how to enjoy those moments, Chad. And so I don't think it's something that you should like avoid at all costs.
Sure,
I think there is value there.
Definitely.
But I understand it's difficult in the beginning, especially to really find your way through those moments when you're so used to traveling with other people. And yeah, I think there's value in both. There's value in both.
Yeah, no, I definitely see the merit, of solo travel, and like I said, there have been some great moments. Yesterday specifically, walking down the kind of promenade and having this just beautiful. I mean, you can see right now the sun is shining very brightly on my face. It's beautiful weather, and just having the camera at hand and being in no rush to go anywhere else. It's your complete own timeline of doing things, and kind of actually planned by evening in a way, to kind of land up at a very particular square almost, at a certain time at sunset, and you got the busker there, having a drink by yourself, and yeah, some moments feel hollow, like you say, Barry, because there's nothing to, you kind of sitting at a dinner table by yourself, and it's weird. I'm not used to that. Where, like you say, I guess once you've done it a couple of times, you kind of get a bit more used to it. But on the whole, I definitely am not going to write off the prospect of it, and I see the value. It would certainly help, I think, if I was on an actual holiday, and able to have a full day to plan to kind of do with whatever I'd liked, and I kind of felt maybe confident enough, like you, Barry, to go into a bar and kind of strike up some conversations with some randoms. I mean, there's tons of Brits here at the moment, obviously with the travel restrictions on, and
no, Chad, you've got to talk to the Portuguese people. You can't speak to the people you know. A lot of the magic of solo travel comes from pushing yourself out of that comfort zone.
Yeah,
it's scary in those situations because you don't have your friend to rely on. When you travel with a friend or you travel with a partner, it's very easy to just interact with them the entire trip and never actually engage with the culture that you're in. And so when you're on those sorts of trips, you can very easily find yourself in the same sort of restaurants you always would go into, talking the same conversations you always would with your friends and your family, right? But I promise you, the magic comes when you push yourself out of that comfort zone. You actually go and engage with locals, and you do things you wouldn't normally do. You see things you wouldn't normally see, and you kind of soak in that atmosphere for what it is and try and understand what a local living in that city is actually about.
Yeah.
And so I think that solo travel forces you to engage much more with the city that you're in than having that crutch, which is your friend or your partner with you, where you can kind of just talk about the same stuff you always talk about. And so Chad, don't talk to the Brits, talk to the Portuguese people.
Barry, that description, it just sounds also good. Ending us off again on such a great note. Thank you very much, Barry. I'll certainly, like I say, return to the prospect, and I'm also introverted, so it should be an easy thing, and I'm an only child as well, so I'm used to this. But I guess you sometimes just need to get to that level of kind of confidence and enjoy that freedom that these trips can bring. That brings to an end an absolutely jam-packed episode. I mean, we touched everything on the spectrum today, didn't we, Barry?
I think so, Chad. Right from really a mood roller coaster, starting on some very sad stuff and ending on some very happy stuff. And so I hope that we found giving you some value. If you're listening or watching right now, we really do appreciate you. And if you are in South Africa, we're praying for each other. We're praying to get out of the situation. If you are struggling right now with anxiety and frustration and sadness and all that stuff, you're not alone. Please know that we're all going through the same thing. And it's in moments like this, you got to reach out to your friends and family and kind of be grateful for what you have, right? So phone that friend and tell them that you love them. Phone your mother, phone your family and tell them that you love them, because it's in moments like this that we need to stick together. And I think that's kind of the prayer that I have for everyone going forward. Wherever you are in the world, let's keep sticking together. Let's keep socially engaging with one another. Don't get into those isolated periods. And stay off the news. Stay away from the news.
News one is such an easy one to get lost away in. So if there's anything that I can, echo enough is from this last week. have a very limited inlet for kind of accepting news in. And yeah, those slower news sources, Barry, we always keep talking about it. The slower news sources, the better. The live TV on repeat is never a good thing. So yeah, thanks so much for tuning in as always. I wanted to end this one off by actually asking if you can give us a follow on our personal platforms. I mean, Barry, you punted your website a bit earlier on. For your newsletter and all that kind of stuff, barrymaurice.com, is that where everyone can find everything that is Barry?
Yeah, exactly. That's the website. And if you want to subscribe to the newsletter, you just put /subscribe after that and you'll get there. But it's pretty easy on my website. So barrymaurice.com, and you can follow all my stuff there.
Amazing. And you can check all of my stuff out at Chad Sturley. Instagram and YouTube is the two that I think I am the most active on.
No TikTok?
No TikTok. That's still not going to come. It's just not going to happen, Barry. Like I said, not me.
I'm gonna remember this. I'm gonna clip this moment, and in a few years' time, when Chad is big on TikTok, I'm gonna bring this moment back. Don't worry.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'll let you clip it on just to see. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've loved spending time together, of course, and we'll see you the same time, same place next week.